Hello, everybody. My name is Michael. In today's episode of Entropy Diaries, episode 2, I want to give you a brief update to what's going on in the world of Entropy. And then from there, we will move on to some backstory to the story that I'm going to be telling. The backstory that I'll be covering isn't necessarily in the story because there's no place for it. I think it'd be out of place to start throwing a bunch of exposition about, places and things like that. So that's why I do these videos. Anyway, let's get back to the Entropy updates. Originally, when I released last week's episode of Entropy Diaries, it was just a random thing. It was just a random day. I've given some thought. I think since August 18th falls on a Monday, and from there on out, I more than likely will be releasing a new video to Entropy stories every 30 days or so. It will more than likely fall on a Monday. I'm thinking Entropy Diaries each week will take place on a Wednesday. I'm recording it now. It's Tuesday. And so that should be easy for me to remember. And hopefully I'll release those videos on time for your enjoyment. I hope you are enjoying the videos. And if you are watching, thank you. Anyway, that's pretty much it. The story's going along very well. Like I mentioned in the last video, it was a story that I wrote about 10 years ago. It was roughly about 12 pages long. And I've extended that to almost 30 now. And hopefully before I'm done with it, because I'm still rewriting it. I've gone over it several times. I thought I was ready to start recording and editing it, but then a couple things stuck out to me that wasn't really all that good. It was kind of confusing, or it just wasn't what I wanted in the story. So I've rewritten parts of it and I've added some more things. Like one of the things I added was I added a son character to Mordecai, his son, a son that he has on the planet, because I noticed in the story, the only other relatives other than his brother and his niece that he interacted with was his wife, and she was in it very little. So I've increased her part. And I've added a son character, somebody else that, Mordecai can relate to or, look after, that sort of thing. I also expanded, I guess you could say, the villain character. Her name is Colonel Lucia Jimenez, and she comes from Earth. And in the original story, she had no backstory whatsoever. She was just basically a name. She was an entity that, something that they could rally against. But in this one, I have given her some more backstory, some more history to her. So you get to know her a little bit in the story, what her intentions are, what her motivations, why she does what she does, that sort of thing. Hopefully that's really, adds to the character and adds to the story overall. So, the name of the story, I don't have a name for it just yet. It's just called Entropy, End of an Era. Because if for the Ladronans that, this is happening to, it is an end of an era. They've been isolated from Earth for several, 3,500 years, give or take. And they thought, there was no more contact with Earth. Because like I said in the other video, they're about a year away by their fastest means of travel. And it took them a couple years to get there. And then over the last 3,500 years, that speed has increased a little bit. So now it's about a year. And everybody who's left the outer colonies, the 20 colonies that they established, anybody that went back to the inner world or to Earth, they have never returned. And they don't know if there's something bad happened to them when they got there, or something happened on the way there or the way back. They just don't have the resources they don't have like these giant fleets of, super fast ships, and they don't have militaries or anything out there because there's no threat out there. The only threat really is, from other colonies. And, when you have space travel, resource wise, there probably isn't going to be a lot of conflict in the space age, give or take. I mean, there's always going to be conflict, but resources aren't really going to be the driving force because, if you could build a spaceship that can travel faster than light, I guarantee you can probably produce water, out of nothing. Well, not nothing, but oxygen and hydrogen. You can produce all the fresh water you need. You probably have access to an energy source that will allow you to, power your cities and whatnot, that sort of thing. So, just like look at, the solar system, there's millions and millions of years of resources just in the asteroid field alone. Not to mention the other planets, and once we start colonizing them or exploiting them to our benefit. And then you have six or seven relatively close colonies that could also provide for you and stuff like that. So, the threat was never really there for them to build grand armies and build a lot of ships. And there are people who are still exploring. They're still exploring, a little bit further out. There might even be more colonies out there that we don't know about yet because they were either started by, people from the outer colonies, or they might have come from the inner colonies and they don't know about them. They've never made contact with them. So it's been about 3,000 years on Ladrona since they last had contact with, the inner colonies or even Earth. And a lot of people on Ladrona don't really care about Earth anymore. They, it had a lot of problems and they left it looking for new lives to escape those problems. And Ladrona is where they ended up at. Now, Leland is Mordecai's brother. I don't think I've ever mentioned his name. I just keep calling him Mordecai's brother, but his name's Leland. And Leland and Mordecai are founders, so to speak, of the world. They're higher ups in what little government Ladrona does have. And people do give them respect because, they were amongst the original colonists, and I guess you could say their ideology and their agenda is what Ladrona is all about. Now, Ladrona itself, it's about the size of Earth. I think I describe it a little bit bigger as Earth. It's a little bit further out from its sun. Its sun's a little bit older than our sun is, so it's warmer. So it's further out. It's somewhere closer to where Mars is in orbit than what Earth is. The sun is a yellow sun, just like, yellow dwarf sun, like, our solar system. So, there's a lot of similarities between the two worlds. It's in a habitable zone. It has a moon. It's got oceans. It's got continents. It's got plate tectonics. It's got life. It just doesn't have any sentient life. Nothing that is too advanced. It's very primitive. It's probably about what you would find on Earth, 100 million years ago or whatnot. And they have introduced Earth life to it, Earth plants, Earth animals, bacteria, obviously, and viruses, just by their sheer being there, would have introduced that to the environment. And, so like I said, it's about 2 years longer. It's about 2 years of what Earth is. And its day is roughly it's a little bit over 27 hours. I think in the story, I'd say it's like 27 hours and 16 minutes or something like that. And the entire colony is planned. I mean, everything, every brick, every tree, every plant, every farm, everything's planned. Everything's pre-planned. Everything was pre-planned before they got there. And one of the things that they decided was to keep the population as low as possible. So they did agree upon like limits on how many kids they could have, how many outsiders they would accept when, if any of them came. Because they do accept people from the other colonies. People from the other colonies do come and live on Ladrona for whatever reason. And throughout the story, we will meet a few of them that do hail from some of the other close by immortal colonies that sprung up. But they like I said, they haven't had any consistent contact with Earth or in the inner colonies for almost 3,000 years, so they don't really know what's going on out there. And they're just content with their own world. So when the emissaries show up from one Earth, they kind of take them by surprise, and they do see it as an invading army. They do see it as being subjugated by Earth now, because their population is really small. I mean, like I said, it's an Earth-sized planet, and they're spread out. There's 2 million of them spread out across the entire surface, and River's Landing, where the story takes place on Ladrona, it's the largest city there, and it's got roughly a population of 10,000, and that's from a like a 500 uh, square radius around, or square miles around, or 500-mile radius around from Rivers Landing, that they come up with that population. So that tells you how sparsely populated they are. And so when One Earth shows up with 500,000 troops and their families and civilians to support their own infrastructure that they start to build when they get there, um, they don't. They, like I said, they see it as an invading army, but they don't have the means to repel them. So they're kind of forced into accepting them there, and it kind of throws everything out of whack. Because Mordecai's a farmer, and his he's had to almost double the size of his farm with his brother to supply just the troops that have been assigned, the couple, 20, 30,000 troops that have been assigned to his area with food and supplies and housing and whatnot. And, like I said, with, they don't have any, they believe in self-governance on this planet. So there isn't really like any unified government that represents Ladrana. It's more of they get together, the founders or representatives, they call themselves, of their communities. They get together every once in a while and they decide, maybe there needs to be a new town or a new road or, new this or new that. And they discuss it and see how it's going to impact, I guess you could say, the environment themselves and, moving forward. They don't do anything out of desperation. They only do things out of necessity, out of need. There's nothing built out of want or desperation on this planet. Because like I said, everything's planned. They don't do anything without planning it first. Well, the arrival of One Earth in the story kind of throws that all into chaos to an extent. And that's what they react to at first, because when One Earth arrives, they bring in with it a more complex monetary system, taxation, laws, a government, stuff that these people haven't had for at least 3,500 years since they arrived on Ladrana. And it's all new to them, and they're very resistant to the idea of these things. But it's still not enough for them to get to fight until an event happens in the story that, that is the line. It's the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess you can say, for them. And they react to it, and Mordecai and his brother are part of it, and so is his family in general is a part of it, and so a lot of people of Ladrana and Julia Jimenez, the colonel, she is a part of it too, and she's a very interesting character. I think I will do a video on her by herself because she is interesting. Originally in the original story, she was just like a figurehead. She wasn't really in the story. She was just like the embodiment of everything that One Earth had brought and all the things that the people of Ladrana were fighting against. And I wanted to expand her character. That's one. That's the other thing. I wanted to expand her character. So quite a few pages have been added to give her some more depth than just the villain of the story. She is very sympathetic because in my writing classes and watching movies, reading books, one thing I've noticed, like, the best villains are the most sympathetic ones, the ones that you could almost relate to. Like Thanos in Marvel, you can almost understand where he's coming from and the burden he feels he has. But, at the end of the day, the guy's a complete nut job and, completely psychotic. And, same with like Lex Luthor. You can almost sympathize with Lex Luthor or the Joker, even from like the Batman Dark Knight series by Nolan. You can sympathize with these characters to an extent, but they're bad guys for a reason. So, we can't sympathize with them too much. So, that's what I've kind of turned her into. She is a she is a sympathetic character, but her dedication to the cause of One Earth is what makes her bad, because she will do anything it takes to see the agenda of One Earth succeed. She's like extremely fanatical when it comes to that, but her backstory makes her relatable even, and um I really enjoyed the character. I'm contemplating if I'm going to keep her in the story at this point, because originally I killed her off, and I've had so much fun developing her that I'm not sure. I don't want her to become like a personification, I guess you can say, of One Earth. Like, anytime Mordecai meets, One Earth in battle or whatever, or any of this big decision makers, that it will be her. But she might have a role to play later on in other stories. I don't know yet. Like I said, she was a really fun character to recreate, and I hope you guys enjoy her as much as I have enjoyed writing her. And same with Mordecai and the rest of his family. Like in the original story, Mordecai only really interacts with Leland and Rachel, his brother and niece. He had a wife. I mean, mentioned her. She was in it for a little bit, but he didn't really interact with her. But I've expanded his wife's role a great deal. And I've also introduced a very young son, somebody who isn't several thousand years old. He's about 25 in Earth years. So he's relatively young. He's inexperienced. He's young. So it kind of shows the dynamic that I'm kind of hoping to show with Imogen in later stories, of like a father-child relationship, and how the immortals, especially like the first generation, will treat younger people. Because he treats him completely, in the first part of the story, he treats him completely like a kid, and maybe even a toddler. He doesn't really listen to him. He won't let him do what he wants. He's just like, I'm your father, you will listen to me, that kind of thing. And as the story evolves, he realizes that his son Aiden is more mature, more of a man than he realized. Kind of gives him a different outlook on these younger kids that are popping up, that are born. And so it's what he'll reflect on when he's dealing with Imogen in the later stories, is his relationship with Aiden. And so is that. So there is that. I've also expanded Leland a lot because, like I said, in the original story, it was only like 10, 12 pages long. So there wasn't a whole lot of character development. There was a bunch of exposition, a bunch of action going on. And in this rewrite, I've expanded all that. I've done character development. We get to know Leland quite well. We also get to understand more of what makes Mordecai tick, what makes Leland tick. We get to really really see how Rachel affects both of them, because she's almost as old as they are. She's a kid from Leland's first life, and who has just kind of stuck with him throughout all these 7,000 years. So when Mordecai's talking to her, he looks at her as an equal. He doesn't even really look at her as like his niece. She's just another immortal, not just another immortal to him, but she's just as capable and equal as he is, because like I said, he's got kind of a bias towards the younger generation. But when it comes to Rachel, he doesn't, because she is as old as him. Because when she was born, he was around in his early 20s, and so you add 7,000 years of that. 20 years isn't anything when you got to 7,000 years. So he doesn't treat her as a kid, and that kind of has an effect on his relationship with his son, because he's like, well, she's your niece, I'm your son, she's my cousin, and I'm your son, but yet you let her pretty much do whatever she wants. But she doesn't quite understand that it's not so much the family relationship, it's the years in between them. She's still 7,000 years old, just like Mordecai and her father, and he's 25. So that's pretty much it on the backstory I want to give. I can't really think of anything else to talk about Ladron. I think I've covered everything I want to in this video. I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me know if there's anything more you want to know about or have any questions, and I will answer them. I'm a very open person. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next.